My dear mother-in-law, Jesus has done it again. There'd been a large crowd following Jesus for the last 3 days. We're in the middle of nowhere when Jesus turned to us and said, "They have nothing to eat." He said that if he sent them home now, they'd collapse on the way with hunger. I must admit I agreed with him, as I was feeling rather peckish myself. James, John, and I looked at each other. What did Jesus expect us to do? And as I told him, where in this remote place were we going to get enough bread to feed them? After all, the crowd must have numbered around 4,000. Jesus then asked us what we had. Well, after checking around, we managed to come up with 7 loaves, rather dry but still edible, and a few small fish. Jesus told everyone to sit down. A hush descended as everyone looked at Jesus. He took the fish and the bread and said thank you to God, and broke them and asked us to give out the bits. 7 loaves and a few fish among 4,000. I thought he was joking. Billy looked at us, and guess what? We gave it out, and gave it out, and gave it out, and everyone had more than enough. We even ended up with 7 baskets of leftovers. It sounds rather familiar, doesn't it? But so much had happened that I'd forgotten what Jesus did with the little boy's picnic, feeding that other large crowd of over 5,000. And when he asked us to get some food for this lot, I suppose we should have said we can't do it, but we know you can. But we didn't. Jesus realized that when he pointed it out to us later on in the boat. But somehow we missed the point again. Sometimes what Jesus says is so hard to understand. Just before we sailed, some Pharisees turned up and asked Jesus some questions. I've begun to enjoy listening to Jesus debating with them. They try and trap him, and he always gets the upper hand. Today they were asking Jesus for a sign from heaven to prove who he was. Jesus told them that they weren't getting one, and then he left. But then he started talking to us about yeast. We thought he meant bread. We'd not brought any with us. But Jesus was clearly thinking of something else. I've been mulling it over. What did Jesus mean by the yeast of the Pharisees and Herod? I know from watching you bake that only a little bit of yeast is needed to make the bread rise, as it can work its way through the whole dough. Was Jesus saying that the religious influence of the Pharisees and the political influence of Herod would work together, working through lots of people and influencing them negatively against Jesus and us? Surely not. I can't imagine that those Jesus has healed, taught, and fed would turn against him. I know I won't. Anyway, time for dinner. But I wouldn't give one of your home-cooked meals and a loaf of your freshly baked bread. Hope it will not be too long before I get to eat them. Love, Peter.